Come back. We are discussing the unemployment rate. We are joined in studio by FEDUSA General Secretary Rifta Ajam, job seeker Princess Majola, as well as the Bureau of Market Researchers, Prof. Carol van Aert. So, Rifta, I mean, we heard there from Princess speaking about a number of issues. She touched on the quality of work with regards to these statistics and what we are seeing. Could it really be a true reflection of what is on the ground? When we look at what government needs to do in creating a conducive environment for the private sector to be able to do business in the country, for them to be able to gain profits. We heard there from Zwelinzima Vavi saying that it seems as though the guarantee is only from the side of government, but private sector not necessarily coming to the party, not taking as much risk as government and the people of this country. Do you think private sector is pulling their weight in assisting in the unemployment numbers in our country?
You know, that's a very sensitive debate, and you've got to look at it from both sides of the divide. We have been pressurizing government for the longest while to say that government is the driver of job creation. Government is, in essence, the largest employer. But at the same time, we cannot ignore the fact that because of the structural challenges that we've had in the economy, you have to have partnerships. You have to have the private sector coming to the party at the same time. And it not only just points to the point that Princess had outlined earlier on, it's not just about the kind of jobs, it's about the quality of jobs. We in no way advocate for precarious work. We will go to the streets and we will burn this country, literally, when we talk about the fact that you are degrading the very fiber of society. Now, when we speak about the fact that you and I have to pay for the same electricity that Princess has to pay, but she doesn't have the resources to do that. Princess wants a job, but she needs to use reliable public transport to get to those jobs. And yes, we have pushed the baton to the private sector, and we need them to do a lot more than what they are doing currently. There is the debate hovering around every corner that there's an investment strike. They are challenging the narrative, but we want them to come to the party and demonstrate that not only do we have public-private partnerships in action, but we can make it work. What we want to see is those stimuluses that government has put on the table in the form of your employment tax incentives, where the private sector has yet to show and demonstrate that these incentives that have been put out there, they are using it and they are skilling and they are upskilling our youth in particular, those young ones that were targeted in terms of the intervention. Government is busy with their public employment programs, but at the same time, the drivers of growth at the same time need to be hinged on the responsiveness of the market and at the same time, the kind of skills and competencies that we need now. We have seen the capabilities of South Africa during the recent G20 that South Africa hosted for the very first time. And the hopes that we carried, not just of the country, but for the entire continent, 1.4 billion people. We have a youthful continent, but we are not making use of that. We've got a 44.5% underutilization rate, which the data speaks to at the same time. So all we are saying, come on, business, dispel the myths, show that we can do this together, because if there is accountability, if there is trust, we can move in the direction of creating those jobs that responds to the need in the economy. And at the same time, during those G20 discussions, we spoke about information technology, we spoke about IT governance, we spoke about this new animal that we are dealing with, the fourth industrial revolution, and all these advances. It is up to them to utilize it to the maximum capabilities and optimize the resources that we have. But unless they are not going to come to the party,
then we won't see
then we are not
change.
going to see those changes that we so desperately need.
Most certainly.
Just to end off on this point now, we're talking about the productive sectors. We are speaking about agriculture and we are speaking about the trade sectors. They have been bleeding jobs. If I can quote it correctly, I think it's about 61,000 and 98,000 jobs that have been bled, and we shouldn't use the QLFS as a soft target to improvise for one at the expense of the other. So there is a lot that we can do, and we should stop hiding behind the fact that the environment and the climate is not there. We sit in NEDLAC, we have been pushing, and I believe that with the trust that we are building and we're moving in the direction, we can and we should be able to do that.
Let's just bring in a caller here. Rifta, sorry to come in there. I'm just trying to ensure that we are all able to participate in the conversation timeously. We've got Thomas in Durban. Thomas, a very good evening to you. What's your take on tonight's conversation?
I want to say good evening to your panelists, and you're 100% correct that I believe that unemployment is a ticking time bomb. If I'm correct in saying that unemployment between 18 and 35 is nearly 40%. Now, the way the government can fix this is when I was at school in 1983, I had to do compulsory national service. Now, you got a choice. You can go to the Army, you can go to the Navy, you can go to the Air Force, you can go to the police, or you can go to the fire brigade. Now, what happens is when you leave school, you get a roof over your head, you get a uniform to wear, you get food in your stomach, and you learn discipline for authority. Now, today's youngsters have got no discipline, no respect for authority. When you're in a team in the Army and one slacks down, you get the rest of the guys to, sort you out. And that gives our borders more security, more police force, and you keep the guys off the street. And it gives them time to think of what he's going to do with his future. Some might stay on and stay a permanent force, or some might move on to something else. Now, another thing is, when you're at school, not everybody can do Afrikaans as a second language, or do mathematics or science. Now, the teachers at school should realize when a guy's battling to do Afrikaans as a second language and he fails that standard, they should speak to the parents and they should open more trade schools. There should be trade schools for electricians, boilermakers, draftsmen, carpenters, builders. When they finish there, they can open their own little business and contribute to society. But our school curriculum is the biggest mistake. My son's got a matric. He's now studying, and my other stepson is unemployed. He's been unemployed for nearly 3 years, and it's a big concern. I don't know where this country is going to, but I believe the government is not thinking with clear heads. There's ways of getting people to do things, especially to start at the roots level. Technical schools for young men, teach them to work with their hands. I find it so despondent when I'm traveling on the road. I'm a rep, and I see young people with their CVs. And I see some young men walking by themselves, and they're talking to themselves. And you might think they're crazy, but they're so despondent. We had a heat wave here in KZN about a week ago, and it's still going on. And they're out in the street. They're looking for work.
Yeah.
There's no one that's lazy. Everybody wants a minimum wage at least to provide for their families. The Minister of Police in KwaZulu-Natal said that 90% of the crime is done by African people. Now, what's biggest concern for him is that it's very, very young African people. Youngsters, people that's supposed to be at school still. That's my point.
It's quite concerning. Thomas, thank you so much for calling in and giving us your thoughts. Prof, maybe let's just continue on that thought process that Thomas has raised. I mean, he spoke about that compulsory national service that was in place in the early 80s. I believe Botswana also had a very similar system, which is the Tirelo Setjhaba, that young people would come out of basic education, find their way within certain sectors for them, not only to understand what it is that they would enjoy as a job, but also to learn discipline as well as respect for authority. Are we getting it wrong at a basic education level that we're now sitting with this crisis of unemployment?
Yes, absolutely. Because remember, is that research has consistently shown worldwide that if you want to create jobs, there are three conditions that need to be in place. The first one is that there must be economic growth, and employment creation must be elastic to that economic growth. The second one is that there should be a business-friendly institutional environment for businesses to thrive in. And the third one is that the people must be employable in those institutions. Now, I can come back to the first two, namely there are higher levels of economic growth that's required that we don't have because we're trapped in a low economic growth environment for quite some time. And we've got a very business unfriendly environment. And we've recently conducted a small business growth index in collaboration with SACI and with APSA. And that has shown consistently of exactly how business people in South Africa experience the environment as being of not being a business-friendly environment. Yeah. But let's just get back to the point that the previous speaker made with respect to the education. Let me give you some very interesting figures in this regard. The University of Stellenbosch have got a group of people that together with the Development Policy Research Unit at University of Cape Town conduct a lot of study with respect to the educational levels and the efficacy of education in South Africa. And they found, for example, that when you look at the absorption of matriculants into the economy, into the labor market, that is incredibly low. But when you look, for example, at the absorption of graduates, that is higher than it is supposed to be. And they try to figure out, okay, but what's going on there? And what eventually panned out, that a substantial part of the graduates, I can't remember the exact percentage, but it was quite high percentage, are not working in jobs for graduates. They are working in jobs that's supposed to be done by matriculants. So they went to speak to a lot of the employers of these graduates that's matriculant jobs. And those employers indicated that the matriculants simply don't have the necessary educational skills to actually do their jobs. That's why they have taken graduates in place. But even those employers were not happy by the graduates because, and here Thomas is spot on, that they said that there should be much more technical schools. Yeah. There should be artisans, for example. But here's another figure that's really of concern that they also pointed out. Internationally, just over 30% of people leaving school become entrepreneurs. In South Africa, that figure is 14%. Furthermore, it's just that when you look at internationally, about 1 in every 2 businesses being created eventually go under. In South Africa, that figure is more than 80% of businesses that fail within the first 5 years because people simply don't have the entrepreneurial skills. So of those 3 conditions that I've indicated, namely higher levels of economic growth, a business-friendly environment, as well as the educational levels that should be correct and in place are simply not there. And that explains your unemployment crisis in South Africa.
When we come back, Princess, I just want us to expand on that, particularly when it comes to the trade schools and artisanal skills that we should be shaping amongst young people in relation to them being able then to take those skills and open businesses. We are speaking about those unemployment numbers that came out today from Stats SA. Do stay with us as we'll continue with this conversation after the break. Welcome back. We are discussing the unemployment rate that has eased to 31.4%, but those that are now despondent are now sitting at a number of about 40%. Our guests in studio are assisting us in unpacking this issue. And Princess, before the break, we were speaking about graduates and some of those jobs that are being taken by graduates, which really should be jobs for people that have a matric certificate. And the issue of artisanal skills came up, and especially with those that are able to go to trade schools, get these skills, and possibly start these small businesses. Do you think we're producing graduates that don't think outside of getting an ordinary job?
That's true. Because let's start with the higher education before we go to institutions like universities. The curriculum that's used by the Department of Basic Education nowadays is not like the one that was used previously. Previously, we used to have those sewing, and then boys will be doing gardening and then welding, plumbing, going to those technical colleges on a Wednesday or something like that to do that training. But nowadays, it's not being done. We no longer have sports at school, so we no longer have those schools those skills that used to be there. Take, for instance, I believe that the skill training should start at a foundation phase, should really start at the lower level, your primary level, in going to high school and then into universities. Because let's look at the graduates that we have now, especially in the teaching field.
Yeah.
We have so many teachers that are unemployed. And then we get told that there is 24,000 vacant posts for teachers. Then you wonder, if there are so many teachers that are unemployed, but then there's 24,000 vacant posts, why aren't those vacant posts being filled? But then you realize that there is a problem here. The problem is a skill. The problem is the subjects that these teachers took or they majored in. You get a teacher who majors in LO, and they're being told that you can do LO, there'll be a job for you. Whereas that is a lie, because majority of the gap that's there within the teaching field, it's that stream that's called STEM, where you have your sciences, your maths, your technology, and none of these teachers or this young students who go to university or your teacher training colleges and who are trying to be who qualify and major, they don't major in the STEM streams. So hence the vacant posts that are there, it's those ones that come from that stream of STEM. That's why we have a high unemployment rate of graduates, teacher graduates. And then again, we have doctors and nurses who are unemployed. In South Africa, where we know that the health sector is deteriorating,
Sure.
We are having our nurses and our doctors are overworked. And our doctors, South Africa likes importing. They like importing, they import everything, whereas we have nurses and doctors who are here, who are unemployed. So, one would say our government doesn't actually care about the people in South Africa. They care about making profits. They care about making these partnerships with the private sector. They only care about, we used to have those TVT colleges, those technicals. What happened to them? Some of them have been turned into residential areas. Some of them have been vandalized. Those infrastructure is standing there vandalized, dilapidated. No one is using it. So we are living in a country where there's a high inequality rate, where profit becomes the order of the day, where profit is much more important than people. So poor people are left there to fend for themselves. Like they always say, it's black child, you're on your own. Why are they not bringing those skills? Why are they not? We've got so many school buildings that are closed. Why are they not reopening them and turning them into skills training centers where this youth, unemployed youth, and the graduates from universities can be skilled there, and then they can be
they can find placements
reintroduced
within the
to
job
the
space.
job
Yeah.
sector.
Well, let's just hold it there, Princess. And I mean, we know that there are about, 26 public universities and TVET colleges that are currently in the country. And even that is not enough, given the number of matriculants that come out of school in relation to the placements that are there for these particular institutions. So already there's a gap, Rifta. But when we're closing off this conversation, really what we need to look at is just the implications also of those people that are now discouraged, not looking for work anymore. What does that breed within our society? And also, what does it do for a shrinking labor force?
It's not difficult when we look at the realities on the ground. I'm a Cape Townian. I know the realities of the Cape Flats. You have to deploy resources, and that is a structural unemployment problem that you have at this point in time. It's senseless you bring the army in when you are not dealing with the very impediment, which is job creation, which is the social ills that are degrading our societies to a level that it becomes so, I don't even want to use the terminology that I'm thinking of now, but we need to find a solution and we need to do it together. There are so many consequences of what is happening now because we are seeing a decline in the participation rate in the economy, and we are not necessarily seeing the uptake and that match that we are looking for, which is so direly needed. So ultimately, when we look at the conversation and we look at the levels of unemployment, we look at the crises that the youth are facing at this stage, and it is the very risk to the fabric of society and to South Africa overall. And at the same time, we must realize that employment is not a byproduct of growth. It is, in essence, the very reason why we are championing it, and it must be the goal of growth. We can no longer function with the way we are dealing with matters now. The change is needed, and it is needed now. There are many societal ills that come from the lack of participation, those that are just so discouraged that they know absolutely nothing can be done. We need to review, we need to take introspect, and in essence, many of the issues that patients raises boils down to education, but it is not just what President Ramaphosa raises about grade R. It goes beyond grade R. It is that fundamental phases that we need to develop and nurture those critical skills. Without it, we are only going to see the scale of the crisis intensifying.
Lastly, Prof, just to wrap it up and quite shortly, I mean, Rifta says unemployment is not a byproduct of growth. What would you say are the strategies that are needed, particularly in ensuring that private sector, together with government, are able to assist in ensuring that more jobs are created?
Yeah, thanks so much for the question. I think there are certain fundamental policy changes that need to be effected in South Africa, and those policies should address those three things that I've indicated, namely the low growth environment, as well as the problems with respect to the education and skills, and then the very constrained business environment in South Africa. If you don't address that, there's not going to be real changes in South Africa. The low-hanging fruit for me is with respect to the educational system. And there's been a lot of research internationally, especially in your Southeast Asian countries, and that includes your Vietnams, Indonesia's, China's, and all of those countries. And they've done exactly the same thing. They've completely revamped the educational system to become much more entrepreneurial, teaching people entrepreneurial skills. They introduced also there the OECD framework for youth and adult financial education, which also includes entrepreneurship that we haven't done. Then secondly, just with respect to the economic growth, the first aspect there is to strengthen governance in South Africa, and that will also then ensure, for example, that there's also much more support for businesses, because we also found in the Small Business Growth Index that a lot of those people, or sorry, more than 50% of the business people indicated they can't employ because they themselves face closure within a year if they don't get the necessary support
And that certainly is quite concerning.
Those are the critical things.
Of course. Prof, sorry to cut you short there, but we are ending our conversation. Thank you so much for your inputs. A lot certainly needs to be done, but it all fundamentally boils down to the changing within the educational system and ensuring that we expand that band where we are able to create jobs. We were joined by FEDUSA's Secretary, Revamping Ajam, job seeker, Princess Majola, as well as the Bureau of Market Researchers, Prof. Carol van Aert. Thank you to all of you for joining us on this conversation. And that's how we wrap up this hour. We'll be back with headlines at the top of the list.